to the level of your expectations. You will fall back on the level of your training. This is especially important when it comes to high-stress environments or shit-hit-the-fan scenarios, where you really need to know and be confident in your abilities to perform in those environments. And the only way to do that is to train them beforehand. You don't want the real scenario to be the first time you're ever exposed to that condition. This is the importance of training things like low light and austere conditions, where you may not always be placed in a situation having to deal with those things, but having the prior experience and the training and the knowledge and the right gear to handle it is extremely important. Today I'm going to be talking about 10 reasons why I think you should train in low light and no light conditions. I'm going to break it down by categories of gear, training, and mindset. First thing I like to consider is, do I even have the gear in the first place? This could be night vision and IR lights, weapon mounted lights, or simply just handheld lights. Whatever it may be in your use case, make sure you have the gear that you need already mounted, already staged, so that it's ready to use and you don't have to think about setting it up during the real life scenario. There's really no point in planning on using things like night vision or weapon mounted light if your night vision is behind 3 padlocks and in a safe, or if your weapon mounted light isn't even mounted to your weapon yet. Make sure you have a plan and you have your gear already set up to use, so that when stuff goes down, you're ready to use it. Another thing to think about is, do you have the right muzzle devices for your firearms to suppress the flash? In no light and low light scenarios, the flash from a short barreled rifle like an 11.5 is way more exaggerated than it is during the daytime. Having a suppressor or some type of muzzle device to reduce that signature is extremely key if you're trying to keep your position hidden from the enemy. For most people's use case, in a home defense scenario, this may not be entirely important, but definitely another thing to consider, and you may want a suppressor anyways to reduce the concussion that you'll experience indoors. Does your gear work? Is it rugged? Is it reliable? Is it ready to use? I struggled with that a little bit because I had not done enough training with the weapon-mounted light activation mode that I was using, which is the rear button on the Surefire. So sometimes I would take my hand off because I'm used to the temporary on pressure pad of the Surefires, and I would leave my weapon light on. Pretty big mistake, because I'm basically saying, hey, here I am. Taking this low light course made me realize how many issues I have with my gear, and I immediately made changes so that I can more reliably deploy my weapon light when I need it. But without getting out there and testing it, I never would have known that I had these issues with my gear. Training in low light and no light scenarios will really poke holes in your gear setup, making sure that you have backup lights, backup batteries, or if your night vision and IR fails, do you have a white light that you can rely on? If that fails, do you have a laser you can rely on? Being redundant and having backups is extremely important, and the last place you want to get caught without a light is in the dark. Training is arguably more important than gear because having the proficiency to use that gear matters more than having the most Gucci rifle setup or the most expensive and bright light out there. Proficiency. Can you use it? Do you know where your light activation button is? Can you reliably reach it? Can you reliably activate it? These kind of questions you should ask yourself before you have to deal with it in a real life scenario. And a great way to do that is training in low light. Do you have the knowledge of what your body does and how you behave in no light, low light scenarios to do so effectively? Specifically what I'm talking about there is rods versus cones and how your eyes behave, how long it takes to adjust and get that natural night vision. A good tip is look to the side of the target to use your peripherals. You can gain a little more information quicker than you would if you were just staring directly at the target. This can be an advantage if you don't have a white light or you're regaining your natural night vision after recently using your bright white light indoors. There are a bunch of different ways you can implement your light to your advantage. Learning these in the low light and no light training scenarios is a great way to figure out what works best for you in your use case. There are 3 main techniques that I have learned or experienced when using flashlights. First one being quick flash on and off to disorient the target or gain some information. This method is very quick and gives little information about you to the target, but you can also gain a lot from getting a quick little look at whatever it is you need to see. The next method is turning it on when you need it. I tend to subscribe to this because in the dark, you can't see. So turn the light on when you need it, turn it back off when you don't. The last one is constant on. So constant on is good if you've already gone kinetic and you got a bunch of teammates and you're not really worried about being found. But I don't recommend that one because it gives away a lot of information, especially when your weapon is down because you're reloading or you're behind cover. You're just basically telegraphing your position to the enemy. Have you practiced weapon manipulations such as reloads, switching to your offhand, transitioning to your pistol? All of those things are extremely hard under no light or low light scenarios if you've never done it before. Additionally, knowing how to do facing movements, shooting from the knee, shooting from the prone, shooting while moving, shooting, moving, reloading, and transitioning all at the same time.
Secondary weapon.
These are all things that you need to be very proficient with in the daytime if you go to apply them at night. Nighttime training or low light scenarios are really going to poke holes in your abilities as well and open your eyes as to what you need to practice more in the daytime so that you can aptly apply it to low light and no light scenarios.
Command to move, you begin moving. You'll hear the command of threat, you'll know there's a threat in front of you. I will give you what I want you to do, whether that is offhand, weak shoulder, or it could be transition, and either transition to your weak hand. Meaning go with your pistol to your weak hand and engage your target. Okay? I'm going to throw curves at you. You need to work through these curves. Okay? Right. Secondary weapon, weak side. Remember, you don't want them to know where you are, you want them to know where you were.
It's a thinking man's game. You have to place yourself on the opposite end of your firearm and your light, whether that be a weapon-mounted light or a handheld light, and think to yourself, what would I see if I were on the other end of this? How would I be affected? Whether that's blinded, am I silhouetting myself? Those kind of considerations have to be taken into account so that you're not just having your light on all the time and you turning it off when you need it, or so that you're moving through the darkness under cover of darkness to help you navigate around the threat. Lights can be commonly used for positive identification of your target. This is absolutely enormous because your most likely use case and my most likely use case is responding to a bump in the night. And worst case scenario is that person is actually a friendly or a good person. You don't want to just have your finger on the trigger, turn on that light and go guns a-blazing. That might be your family member. So having the trigger discipline and the wherewithal to turn on the light, positively identify your target, and decide not to shoot is huge. Even in the class I was taking, there was one course of fire, quote unquote, where the instructor called threat but did not call for us to shoot because he wanted to see if everyone had the trigger discipline to positively identify the target first. We only did that one time because it is a shooting class, but I thought it was extremely valuable to just sprinkle it in there randomly when we weren't expecting it to really test our mindset and make sure that we're all focused on positive identification, acknowledging that there's a threat, and then neutralizing the threat. Turn your light off when you don't need it. If you're in a very defensive, solid position and you don't need to use your flashlight, then don't turn on your flashlight. If you can see enough from where you are and you can have the situational awareness that you need from that position, keep the cover of darkness as your ally, and then when you need it and you need to see, then you can turn it on. As a bonus category, I'm going to talk about some ways you can train low light and no light scenarios, even if you don't have a cool range in your local area that hosts these kind of classes. First thing is you can dry fire in your house. Turn off all the lights, get your weapon mounted light set up, get your handheld light set up, or even your NVGs if you're high speed like that. Start moving throughout your house, figure out where all the creaking floors are, where the dark corners are, how you need to approach those corners and take those rooms in a no light, low light scenario. If that's not enough for you, you can also do a little bit of force on force training with some airsoft, some paintball, or some simunitions. This is a great way to learn because pain is an excellent teacher. So when you make a mistake, you're gonna find out real quick because someone's gonna shoot you. So even though airsoft has a bad reputation sometimes, it's a great way to learn weapon manipulations, body movements, facing movements, and again, pain is a great teacher. The last method, and the best method in my opinion, is actually getting out there, taking low light courses, and learning all of these things that I just talked about. The best way to learn all of this is firsthand experience. Write down a lot of the things that you need to work on, get out there and train. That's all I got for you guys today. Let me know what you think of low light and no light training. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.